Hello everyone. I am re-recording the video I made concerning the City of New York Law School graduation speech by Fatima Mohammed. And because there was a lot of background noise, and when I recorded, I didn't realize that. Um, so I wanted to do analysis from a conscious and spiritual perspective of what she said, so that people can kind of start to get a feel for how consciousness level plays out in the real world, the physical world. So, one of the things, if you haven't heard her address, I'm just going to give you a little quote that's really at the crux of the debate, is that it was, she says here, may we rejoice in the corners of New York City, our New York City bedroom apartments and dining tables. May it fuel the fight against capitalism, racism, imperialism, and Zionism around the world. The law graduated added to the, at the end of her speech. So this is, that's kind of the crux, is that it was a very, anti-capitalist, anti-Zionist, racist, anti-imperialist speech. And the only thing that was really missing from her speech, from the new ideology that's being pushed by academia and has been adopted by many of our democratic leaning politicians, is the climate crisis. So that's the only part, the portion that was left out of her speech. But that being said, I really want to concentrate on the level of consciousness of her speech, and why, it is, and in some ways, why it, as well as that type of social justice ideas, are divisive, right? So one is that if on a consciousness level, and this is based on the map of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins, it is included in my book, Freedom from the Unconscious. And here he states that, anger and pride are at a level of 150 to 175, where anger, the predominant emotional state, is hate. The view of life is antagonistic. The God view is a God of vengeance, right? And then the process is aggression. Pride, the emotional state, is scorn. The view of life is that it's demanding. The view of for God is indifferent, and it's a process of inflation of the ego, right? So the next level up is 200, and that's courage, where the predominant emotional state is affirmation. The view of life is that it's feasible, I can do this. The view of God is permitting, and the process is empowerment. And so at that between that pride at 175 and courage at 200 is the line where between destructiveness towards life and creativeness towards life. So 200 and above, we're creative, and below 200, 199 and below, it's destructive to life. So there's going to be, it could involve loss of life, So, and that's one of the issues with the current, social justice movement, is that, it creates a great deal of conflict. So pardon me, but my first point is that if you lived in a country, community, or come from a family that had and yourself as well, carry apathy, which is the idea of despair, and hopelessness, which is kind of a lot of feeling of disempowerment, which I can't do anything about my situations, nothing's ever going to change. And if you also come from, like, say, grief, where there's tragedy, life is difficult, or fear, where there's anxiety, life is scary, it's terrible, it's just, God is, either doesn't know me, punishes me, and in essence, a process of withdrawal is the main idea there. And so at that consciousness level, if you're coming from that consciousness level, then certainly anger at 150, and pride at 175, because the fear is at 100, grief is at 75, and apathy is at 50. So certainly, if your primary life view and emotional state is of apathy, grief, and fear, then certainly taking you from fear at 100 and grief at 75 to anger of 150 and pride of 175 is definitely an increase in consciousness level. However, it's still below 200 and is fundamentally destructive, right, to life. And so that's the crux of it, is that, it's trying to help push people to the level of empowerment, and so, but you don't want to get stuck in that anger and in that pride. You need to move through it and to understand that it's all about self-empowerment, that you can do, that there really was never a point where you couldn't do or not be. It was sort of like a false belief of your own self, no matter the circumstances that you believe to be true, is that you are an agent of the direction of your own life, right? You always could be empowered. You just didn't feel that way. So in some ways, if if a great majority of students are going to college today are coming from community, family, and self that are come from apathy, grief, and fear, which is between a conscious level of 50 and 100, and the social justice that ideas like that are coming out today that are being promoted, move you to 150 and 175. It certainly is an improvement. However, I just cannot really, emphasize just that it's still destructive to life. So, that being said, the situation, in between Israel and Palestine is kind of trapped in that same anger, pride, mentality, right, or consciousness level. So since I was little, I always prayed for peace, in the Middle East, but that's been, a really big concern of mine, always really. But the thing is that if it doesn't matter either side, right? I think that there is for instance, there are good reasons why the people Jewish people who've decided that a state of Israel is needed in order to protect Jewish people from annihilation, which the Holocaust clearly provides physical world influence, and that there is a danger, right? You may feel some fear and need to protect yourself. So again, that's at 100, right? And so there's also pride in developing a pride in your identity, which is Jewish identity. So that moves us up to 175. So, and in that, and trying to develop a productive state like they are in technology and education and these types of things, then it moves into the issue of empowerment. So however, there are levels of consciousness, right, that exist within, you could say, a community. So if on one side you have a predominant or a good portion, fear and fear, grief, apathy, and and anger, there you're going to have a lot of conflict. Now, conflict is an opportunity for growth in consciousness. But and this is why I'm trying to say this. It's not coming out. I feel like I came out a lot better the last time I said it. But the issue is that if people are coming from a level of fear and anger and pride, it is going to be destructive to life. And the issue is that everyone involved needs to transcend that consciousness into empowerment. So there has to be an issue eventually. Courage is empowerment, neutrality, which is trust, feeling that life can be good for all, that God is enabling, and at a 300 level, you're talking about an emotional state of optimism. You're talking about the view of life is hopeful. The God view is inspiring, and the process is intentional. I live intentionally, and so people need to move up, and without that inner work that's done to move you to understand how this works, to understand how consciousness is and how you move through those levels, people are going to get stuck. And you could almost say that people may be like souls who have, issues with anger, right? And who have issues with pride and issues with fear may continue to incarnate in this same area over, maybe over and over and over again, or from other incarnate in this area to work out this conflict until you, in essence, transcend it. You rise above it, increase your consciousness level, and move out of that state of, anger and fear and anger and pride. So, but it takes everybody to move out of that. And so, as long as someone decides not to do the work, who stays in the issue of their pain and lives their unhealed trauma, and say, no, I need to have vengeance, I need to have revenge, I need to have, I need to, even the score, and for what's been done to me, as long as this promulgates, it's really never going to stop. And so that's why I say maybe God reincarnates souls here that need to work out this level of consciousness in the same area. So it's like different souls, and since other souls transcend it and move out of that conflict, but then other souls come in, and it just becomes an area of which to work this type of thing out, in the greater scheme of things. But that being said, I just wanted to say this about the current social justice movement. I could say things individually about the items, about her speech, but I might address her speech by topic, about the issue of racism and capitalism, imperialism. I think those are separate videos, but my main point in this one is just to denote the level of consciousness of her speech, and in general where the social justice movement is at. So and it's also, I guess, and it's also an example of how consciousness works. So although I just can't say enough, is that although it is an increase of consciousness, it's still at a low level. And it's still destructive to life, and this is why it creates all these riots and the conflict and loss of life between Palestine and Israel, and those types of things. So which it could later lead even to bigger conflicts here in the United States, because of where the general consciousness is at. That being, again, the one more point that I would like to make is that many people have a consciousness level higher than 200. Millions of people do. So we don't necessarily need to be dragged in to that conflict, and so I think there is an idea that, oh, if you just look the other way, then it's not, and this is not the case. It's just that a person of higher consciousness level can't let themselves get drugged down into that. So you can have compassion, I think, for people at. You can support them in that. But this is what, I kind of feel like this video is a little bit to kind of bring attention to that it is low consciousness, and to move past empowerment. Live your life, and you are in the success of your life, and you enjoying your life, and living a productive, happy life for you and your children in the future, and your family going forward. That really helps to lift everyone up. But getting down in the dirt and sort of fighting over the same old issues doesn't really get us anybody anywhere. So however, people have a choice, and they can stay stuck in the anger consciousness level, and so the conflict continues, right? So it's up to every single person involved to make a choice to lift their consciousness level, to say a creative state, that life is good, life is abundant, we can all prosper, those types of things. And that and I guess I'll talk about a little in a different video, about the like being anti-Semitic. In a different video because there's a lot involved in there, and so I would like to address that separately. But some of the and we need to let go of old thinking and old indoctrination. The old indoctrination, this thing, I hate to say it, of the Catholic Church that the Jews were bad and all that kind of stuff. Because of the crucifixion of Christ and just this continual narrative just really isn't helpful, and so I think some people, I've seen other videos talking about how that story I don't want to say it's like a marketing tool to sort of to develop in the early years of Christianity, people, I guess I don't say converting to, but becoming Christian, and following that path, and so they were persuasive in their argument, and they had to separate themselves, make a distinction between what Judaism and Christianity, and so in order for people to make that move over and join the new belief system, under Christianity. So I think that like I said, that's an issue to be addressed in more detail in another video. But I really think that it's destructive, and that's an old belief system, along with and I do agree with racism and those types of things. I do think those are some of the old belief systems that need to go away. But I would like to replace it with a positive outlook of that life is good and abundant. Life is good and abundant. God is good. He loves everyone, no matter what it looks like. He loves everyone, no matter what it looks like. And that's the message I want to leave. I don't don't really like the whole social justice thing, from not that the issue, there aren't issues, there aren't people treating other people poorly or badly, and those types of things, and having maybe incorrect belief systems, those sort of things. It's not that I don't necessarily agree with that standpoint, but the issues come to life not as from a victim consciousness, but in a consciousness of creating a positive worldview through positive action, positive intent, and knowing and living in the knowingness that life is good, God is good, and that for a long time people have not really been taught that way or spoken about life that way, and so that we all need to change our perspective that it can be better, but it's really one individual at a time. You have to change your own outlook, and by creating these people are the victim and the abuser doesn't really get us anywhere, no matter that there were those things that happened. They happened, but the best way is just to move forward and on, up and up, up and onward, up and onward, up and onward, because if you sit there trying to be tit for tat and being revengeful and trying to even the score and those types of things, it's really not going to get. It's just going to create the cycle over and over and over again of violence. It may switch power and go back, and then the other people are going to get upset, and they'll rise up and create, get their people together to regain control, and then it'll go back, and then it'll go back, and then lives lost over and over and over and over and over and over again, and so at some point, people need to really say, we need to move, I said elevate ourselves out of this. We need to elevate our consciousness out of this continual karmic cycle of you could say of I don't know, and that part of it is not just the fear and the anger and revenge and a poor outlook on life and those types of things. It also has to do with it also has to do with not changing, the inability to change, being stuck. And so you're stuck in a repetitive cycle, And even naming a new abuser, naming a new victim, naming it over and over and over again is not that there aren't injustices, but it makes us stuck, because it just makes it really turns the victim into the new abuser, right? And it's for healing has to happen. Healing has to happen in order to improve the outlook for everyone. And typically, the reality is the healing has to come to, quote unquote, the victim, right? Has to do the healing to move forward and on. And I can guarantee you this: when who you are, and when you're healed, you are, I guess, what do you want to say, the poster board or the poster child for that new world. What's possible? You don't even have to say anything. Just you walking into the room and being who you are is a notice to people who had old belief systems, limiting belief systems about people of color or women, or different identity. Is the fact that they will see that, hey, it'll be sort of a wake up call for their for their own need to change their belief system, right? So yeah, so changing their own belief system, and it's not easy, and people do fight back, don't, and get angry, but you energetically need to just hold your own, and not, when you're healed, when those people who have negative, I guess you could say negative, I guess, interpretations of yourself, and or who, don't trigger the pain anymore or the anger. That's when you're healed. So I think that's my message. My message is of healing, of empowerment, and about really moving out of this anger and pride into a point of empowerment, that life is good, that God is good, and God loves every single one of us, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it looks like. He's there, and so and in essence wants the best for everyone. We just have to open the door and go through it. So we have to embrace change, because it's all about change, upward and onward, and elevation of consciousness. You can't get stuck in those levels of fear of change. You can't be stuck. You also can't be, no matter, you could say whoever, like whichever, I guess, side you're on, but you can't get stuck. You have to go with the flow of life, and maybe greater opportunities, are somewhere else. Maybe greater opportunities are there, but with a different mindset. And so really it comes down to the people who are involved to find what is that higher meaning, a more positive, outlook on life, and where can you find it. So that's where you have to go within and ask yourself, what's best for me, and that because I want to live a happy life, I want to live a prosperous life, I want to live an abundant life. And from that perspective, where is that going to take me? What is it I need to do that? Is continually engaging in a fight, that gonna get me there? Is being mad at always somebody and pointing the finger at someone else gonna get me there? And I'm not saying that things don't happen. That's not, I think that's where, people get confused. I'm not saying that bad things don't happen. I'm not saying that there aren't abuses and that you shouldn't stand up and voice yourself to that. I said, but if you honor yourself, you'll know what the next step needs to be. But you always need to really think of what is positive for life, for everyone involved. And it takes people from both sides to transcend that mindset. So people have to really to be unstuck. But there's a lot that has to be old belief systems, that need to be dismantled. And but you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change. And have to realize that, there were a lot of lies that have been told. A lot of lies that have been told. A lot of things promoted over thousands of years. And the question is, are you going to be the one to change it? or you're going to become the new abuser, right? Because I think that's what happens, is that in this, they only, this, the victim becomes the new abuser. That's what will happen. And like I said, the karmic cycle will take another turn, and then it'll take another turn, and the power will shift back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and there's no real peace in this world that can be had until you elevate your consciousness upward and onward. Thank you.